Hey my good friend, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. I've had the chance to test drive two of the hottest vehicles of 2022, the Ford Maverick and the Hyundai Santa Cruz, the new compact crossover pickup trucks. So we've taken the two test drives and put them together here so that we can compare them side to side, see how they stack up. It's time for a face-off. Okay, before we get started, what we've done here is we've taken two different test drives and we've put them together with some highlights to see how each part of this truck compares: the exterior, the interior, the infotainment, powertrain, and handling. And we're going to be talking about the differences along the way. So let's start with a walk around. This is a 2-liter EcoBoost Ford Maverick. This has all-wheel drive, XLT trim grade, and the FX4 package. As such, we're pricing out at about $30,000 and some change. Looking at the styling, there's no question this is a Ford pickup truck. The front end, the face, this has the Ford DNA that we first saw in the most recent F-150 and now most recently the new 2023 Ford Ranger. It's got the headlights and the grille design, that bar that reaches into the headlights. Headlights on this one are LED headlights. Down in the lower fascia, you'll see the tow hooks. Those come with the FX4 package and only with the FX4 package. And coming around the side, one of the benefits of that packaging is the fact that we've got some nicer tires here. These are 235/65/17 Falcon Wild Peak all-terrain tires. And coming down the side, you can see that there is a nice plastic trim on the bottom, but they didn't go for trim on the wheel wells here like a lot of crossover SUVs have. This has a little bit more of a simpler look. From this angle, a couple of things I wanted to point out. First thing is that antenna up on the roof. I've been reading out there on the forums, that's actually getting a little bit of controversy. If you're putting any kind of a rack system or a lumber rack or a tent or anything that reaches over the cab on this truck, it's in your way. That to me is more of a practical matter than anything. Coming to the back, you can see down in the lower bumper, this has the trailer hitch with a 4-pin connector. That comes with the FX4 package. Also, if you option that thing from the factory by itself, it's $100. That's a no-brainer, man. That's a no-brainer. You cannot put that hitch on your own truck for less money than that. Of course, because we have the FX4 package, you get the all-important sticker there on the rear quarter. Coming to the back here, the first thing I wanted to point out in the rear cargo box is the fact that this does not have a soft open tailgate like we have come to expect on a lot of the midsize and full-size trucks out there these days, but it is light enough that it's not a big deal, not like a big heavy tailgate that we find on a lot of the full-size trucks. Looking in the box, this does have the spray-in bed liner and plenty of hooks for your cargo. Over on the driver's side, this does have, with the XLT trim grade, the openable storage cubby. Not lockable, but you can definitely store a few things down in there. Over here on the driver's side, this is still a blank plate. What this is a 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz compact crossover pickup truck, and this is the fully loaded limited model with a 2.5-liter turbocharged engine and all-wheel drive. As such, we are at $41,000 and some change. This is about the most you can spend on this truck. And right up front, you can see on the Limited, this has a beautiful black chrome grille. I really love that detail. It makes it look expensive, and you can see that down on the lower bumper as well. And look at this. The daytime running light LED signature lights actually light up from behind that black chrome. Is that not cool? And look at the look of that, man. It's like some kind of a robot from a space movie. And the LED headlights, those aren't those. They're actually down in the lower bumper, and they work quite well at night. It's worth noting. Coming around the corner, you can see this has 20-inch wheels. That is standard on the Limited. 18-inch wheels are standard on lower trim grades. And look at the detail on the fender lip molding. Isn't that cool? Just some nice, crisp detail to give this thing a little extra styling pop. Along the top of the bed, you can see a lot of detail here, just like on the rest of the truck. Hyundai's been doing a lot of detail lately. Looking at the tailgate, you can see Santa Cruz stamped in there, and LED taillights, the way they're designed, really emphasize the height with their horizontal shape. Down in the lower bumper, more of that black chrome that's part of the Limited package, and some nice bumper steps down there as well to help us get up into the cargo box. Either side of the bed, there are storage cubbies. You can open those up. This one actually has an AC outlet on the passenger side. Also here is very much like the Honda Ridgeline. This has a trunk in the back of the cargo area. It's waterproof. You can actually use it for an ice chest if you want to. You can hose it out. It's got drain plugs in there, gas struts to hold it open. Composite bed, meaning that you don't have to buy a bed liner for it. It's already a bed liner in and of itself. Also notable here is the roll-up tonneau cover. This has an aluminum roll-up tonneau cover. It is lockable, very sturdy. This does come standard on the higher trim levels. So when you close it up and lock it, you've got a nice secure place to store your items. As we can see already, these two brands have taken a completely different tack to developing their product. Ford went a little bit more conservative, a value play. Hyundai, sexier and more upscale. About a $4,000 difference across all trim grades in these two products, the Hyundai being a bit more premium. And we can see what that gets you already. That bed, look at that nice composite bed, the trunk that's lockable inside, and a standard roll-top tonneau cover on higher trim grades. And don't forget payload. The Hyundai beats the Maverick in payload by a pretty good margin, but let's have a look at the interior. The interior of the Maverick is a place that you're probably going to be pretty happy with design-wise if you like the color blue, because all three trim grades come with a blue interior, regardless of which exterior color you get. Called Navy Pure, this is actually a color that you're going to find in some of the Highline versions of the F-Series pickup trucks, the full-size ones. And being in the XLT trim grade, this has some extra accents and extra trims that make it a little bit more vibrant, let's say. Across the dash and on the door panels is a white plastic trim that has a speckled finish. Looks a lot like solid surface countertops, like a Korean style countertop. Also part of the XLT trim grade are these orange accents. You find them on the vents here and also on the removable rubber pieces that you find down in the center console. Now, that said, this is a basic interior. This is a truck that was meant to start out at $20,000, and that means there is hard plastic literally everywhere. The only place you're going to find soft touch materials in here are on the center console lid and on the actual armrests. And the good thing is the quality materials in here, even though it is hard plastic, is still pretty good. It's consistent across the board. Looking at the switchgear, the quality of the switchgear is pretty good. And even though we are in a basic truck, I have a manual climate control system here. In the XLT, I still have a plastic steering wheel. All the controls are on here for your audio and the information settings. And one benefit to going to the FX4 package on the center screen in front of me is the fact that this comes with the fancier instrument cluster that you would normally only find in the Lariat. But because this has the off-road screens and some of the other things that go with the drive modes for the FX4, you get that upgrade here even in the XLT. Kind of a nice bonus because the basic instrument cluster is pretty basic. Down here, there is a place to lay your phone flat. A wireless charger is available on some trim grades, but you can also set your phone up vertically. So I like that. I like to be able to keep an eye on my phone when I'm driving. If I hear a chime, I can look down and see if a certain notification is there. I love that. The USB ports are here for your connectivity here, as well as power, and a 12-volt power port as well. Cup holders in the center and other little cubbies down here behind that. Now, one thing this has that I'm not so jazzed about is the dial gear selector. I almost always prefer a lever. Now, storage in the center console is pretty generous. This is actually about 1.5 Kleenex boxes worth of storage in here. Now, these are manually adjusting seats in this trim grade. I have a height adjustment, I've got a fore and aft adjustment and a recline, but that's it. There's no lumbar adjustment or anything like that, so they're pretty basic seats. The good news is that they're firm and comfortable. When you're sitting in the back seat of the Maverick, there's no question that you're sitting in a compact truck, but I will point out that having sat recently in a Ford Ranger as well as a Toyota Tacoma, this is actually just as comfortable, if not maybe a little bit more. Here you can see I've got a pretty good seating height. My knees aren't perched up. This is a very natural seating position. You know, I don't feel like I'm claustrophobically challenged back here. Let me just put it that way. Now, when it comes to amenities back here, we are on the XLT. There is a 12-volt charging port here, and the fits slot down here in the bottom of the console so that you can put accessories there, things like cup holders, which are missing back here. Missing back here, of course, are vents. There are no AC vents on the back of this console. And when it comes to storage, you can fold the seat bottom up, and there are storage bins built in underneath this seat. Now, if you get the hybrid, you're going to lose half of that bin on the passenger side because that's where the 12-volt battery will be. but it's a nice storage area, and the seat does fold forward, not so much for storage, but to actually access the jack and some other things that are stored back there. The interior of the Santa Cruz is a place that's going to look pretty familiar if you've ever sat behind the wheel of a contemporary Tucson, and that's because it's exactly the same. It's the same dash, for the most part, the same seats, door panels, and everything else. And that's a good thing, because this is beautiful. This is a dual cowl design with flowing lines and a lot of high quality materials, high quality switchgear, and these materials, these are soft touch materials in almost every direction that your hands may roam. It's definitely a step up and helps make this thing worth the extra $4,000 to $10,000 you're going to pay over its main competitor, the Ford Maverick. Because we are in the Limited, this does have leather seats, and these are both heated and ventilated, power operated. At least for the driver, it is a manual seat. For the passenger, they're very comfortable, they're a firm seat, but they're very supportive, and having sat in these quite a long time on some road trips, they're great. Sitting here looking forward, there is a leather covered steering wheel with paddle shifters for the 8-speed transmission. And ahead of me is a large 12+ inch digital instrument cluster. This is something that's definitely an above average feature. It's fully customizable, and when you set the drive modes, it really changes the look of it. You get different dials, you get different colors, and you can actually configure a lot of the information that you find there. Center stack includes all your controls for the infotainment touchscreen, as well as climate control, HVAC. Down in the center console, a nice big cubby down there. Here, this has a wireless charger for my phone, and it fits down there nicely, and I can actually see it. So if something pops up on it and I just need to sort of know about that, I can see that out of the corner of my eye. Traditional gear shift lever, I love that, much better than the twist dial the competitor offers, and the controls for your drive modes and four-wheel drive system and other things. Cup holders off to the side so that you can put big gas station cups there, and they're not going to interfere with whatever you're doing. And then a bank of switches right behind that for the seats, the heating, ventilation, and the heated steering wheel. That is cool. When it comes to storage, we've got a nice sized box down here that's a little bit larger than a square tissue box. Sitting in the back of the Santa Cruz, I am reminded of the fact that this is the compact pickup class. It's not exactly tight, but it's not exactly roomy. Now, first blush, it feels like when I sat in the Maverick recently, it was a little bit more spacious. And the other thing I'm noticing is that the seating position feels a little bit on the low side. You can see that my knees are perched up just a little bit, and I'm not feeling like I'm able to really fully enjoy all of the support that the seat gets, because I'm just not touching all of it. That said, legroom is pretty decent. These seats are set for my height, about 5'9", with my boots on, and I've got about an inch in front of me. When it comes to amenities, I do have vents back here, something the Ford Maverick does not have. There are charging ports down in the bottom for USB, but not available back here, surprisingly, is a 12-volt port or an AC port, such as on the Maverick. The other thing I do find missing here is a fold-down armrest for the back seat, especially here on the top trim grade. But when it comes to versatility, you can fold these seats upward in a 60-40 split to give you some storage area underneath. This is a nice storage area. They did use part of it for the jack. That said, it does exist, and it is there for versatility. The interior is where these two trucks really differ the most for me when you get past styling and power and capability. The interior on the Santa Cruz is a very high quality place, really one of the best interiors, not only in the Tucson, which comes in the crossover SUV class, but in this class. The materials, the design, the features that come standard, as well as those you can get optional, all far exceed what's available in the Maverick. If you sit in this vehicle, there's no denying it if you're honest with yourself. And this really goes to why the Santa Cruz does cost a bit more money. But one more part of the interior we've got to talk about is the human-machine interface, the infotainment system. When it comes to the infotainment system, this is an area that's gotten a lot of discussion with the Maverick. This is a very basic touchscreen radio. That's it, okay? This doesn't have navigation. This does not have satellite radio. In fact, this doesn't even have Sync 3, something that, for the most part, we thought was standard in all Fords. This is a base grade radio, an 8-inch screen, but it does have a lot to offer in terms of feature content. It does have Apple CarPlay. It does have Android Auto. Not wireless, but connective. It does have Bluetooth connectivity. The other thing I would point out here is that the audio quality is you know, I've read about that, and having spent the week in it, I can tell you that it's not audiophile. This is not the B&O sound system. The audio quality is okay, but certainly not the best in the business. There are some features here that you wouldn't expect, however, in a base radio. It has a 4G Wi-Fi hotspot. For a base radio, I think it's okay in the $20,000 truck. I think up here at $30,000, I think they should have given us a bit of an upgrade here. Hyundai certainly did. When it comes to the infotainment system, because we're in the Limited, this has the top of the line 12.3-inch screen and Bose audio system. Now, we've talked about this system in a number of other cars, and here in this installation, one of the things that really gets my attention is the fact that we don't have hard controls for things like volume or tuning. There are controls here, touch sensitive controls and things like that, but it's always nicer to have a knob for tuning and especially for volume. There are switches over here on the steering wheel, but it's just easier when you don't have to hunt and peck around on touch buttons and things like that. Feature content is plentiful here. This has Sirius XM, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, but it is not wireless here. Oddly enough, wireless comes standard with the base models, but when you get up into the higher trims with this upscale system, you lose that. Odd, I think. But this does have excellent sound quality, and the backup camera is a full surround view camera. That's actually a marketing term from Nissan, so sorry Nissan for using it, but it works very well both going backwards and forwards. This is another area where we can see where the money spent on the Santa Cruz really gets you something. The infotainment system on these two trucks, it couldn't be more different between the two. The base system in the Ford is pretty low grade, all the way up till you get into the Lariat and you get the high-end package that gives you the Sync 3 and the next step up. And that's not even the best thing that Ford offers out there. In the Hyundai, on the other hand, their base audio system beats the best system you can get in the Ford, and the system that was in the truck we tested here, one of the best in the business. So there's a big difference here as far as the human-machine interface and the infotainment system. But not everybody cares about this stuff, quite honestly, so how it drives is what we're talking about now. This does have all-wheel drive, but it is not a locking transfer case style four-wheel drive system that a lot of trucks have. No, this is more like what you might find in a car with all-wheel drive or a crossover with all-wheel drive. But the first thing I'm noticing out here is, even though that the chassis on this is more or less just like any other Maverick, it's pretty robust. It feels nice and solid, and because of the size, it's very maneuverable. And the ground clearance, even though it's not nearly as much as you might find on some of the more off-road oriented SUVs, it's plenty for a more mild-mannered drive if you're way off the pavement. But the good thing is it feels solid. It feels like a truck in terms of the firmness of the suspension. But now it's time for my favorite place to take a truck or a crossover, and that is the Desert Washboard Road. Because while it isn't hardcore off-roading, this rhythmic vibrating surface really tells me how well built this thing is. And so what I'm noticing so far is that I am driving a crossover unibody vehicle, and as I mentioned out there, a little bit more vibration does come through, but I'm not getting any rattling in the suspension or the steering, which is a good thing. That means everything's bolted together nice and solid, and I'm not getting any rattling or vibration or shuddering from the components in here in the interior. The dash isn't bouncing up and down. I'm not getting rattling in the door frames or any of those sorts of things. On paved roads, the one thing I would say is that this does have a firm suspension like you'd expect on a truck, so it has that tough, solid feeling that you get from a pickup truck that's a few notches up from a car. But when it comes to refinement, road feel, handling, response from the steering, things like that, this has a level of refinement and enjoyability that you're not going to get in most body-on-frame trucks. Now, when it comes to road noise, I've read a little bit out there. People were curious about the road noise. I actually did a decibel test on this, doing a standard 70-mile-per-hour cruise on the freeway. I have a test patch that I try to test all vehicles on. This rolls along at an average of 62.1 decibels at 70 miles an hour with a high of 75, and that is for things like tar strips and things like that. Now, this does have the all-wheel drive, and the first thing I want to point out is that this actually, unlike the Ford Maverick, has a button down here on the console that allows you to lock the four-wheel drive system, and that means you can tell this thing you want it to have all-wheel drive instead of depending on the computer to engage it when it thinks it needs to. So if you're just going out someplace and you know you're going to want to have that at the beck and call, you can tell the computer system to lock it and have a 50-50 torque split. So as we're rolling along, a few things that are affecting our overall driving experience. This does have a fully independent suspension. There's a lot of bumps and ruts and rocks on this road, and I'm finding that the chassis is pretty solid and well composed over this. The steering has a nice light feel, which makes it easy to maneuver out here. It just feels a little bit more solidly bolted together than most SUVs. So if you're somebody who's concerned about, oh, it's not a real truck, I really can't take it out in the rough stuff, what I'm finding out here is that this thing can take it plenty well. I can really just sort of feel how well tuned the suspension is, how well bolted together it is. Do I have any rattling in the suspension? No. Do I have any kickback or rattling in the steering? No. Am I getting any rattling in the interior trim? Are these doors shaking and shuddering in their frames? No, none of it. I'm actually quite impressed at how well composed this thing feels out here on this surface. On the pavement, I think, is really where this truck shines the most. It does well off-road, it does well in the dirt, and we expect that in a truck. But this is a vehicle that has a level of refinement. It feels like a step up. It feels like I'm driving in a more expensive luxury SUV. And yes, in its class, this is the more expensive choice. And the good news is it feels its price here. It's got a very quiet ride. Our rolling average is 70 miles an hour. It was 60.3 decibels with a high of 73. That's very good. And the handling, this has a pretty firm suspension, but it's not so firm that you go, that's rough. It's got a nice balance of being supple and refined and comfortable around town, even with these 20-inch tires. I found that rolling over speed bumps, potholes, the speed humps in my neighborhood, that the suspension never crashes or makes loud noises. It's rarely jarring, and the steering, as I mentioned out on the trail, has a nice light weighting to it, unless you dial it up into sport mode, which does make the steering feel a little tighter and heavier. This just has a nice feel for living with it every day when you're out driving it around your neighborhood. And on the highway, a very nice quiet ride, as I mentioned. Low wind noise, very stable feel on the highway. This thing really just has one of the best chassis I've really ever experienced in a pickup truck. Both off and on road, I think the handling on these two trucks is really a push, at least as I tested these two. I had the off-road version, the FX4, the Maverick, and I had a vehicle from Hyundai that really wasn't tailored to off-road driving, yet it did quite well, even with those 20-inch wheels. The one thing I would point out is that on the Santa Cruz, you have a lockable four-wheel drive system. You can press a button on the console and make it all-wheel drive. On the Maverick, you have to depend on the computer deciding to send power to the rear wheels if you need it. And if you dial up the drive modes, you can bias that a little bit more, but it doesn't have a four-wheel drive lock. So that's a big distinction when it comes to off-roading. As far as everyday driving, I thought these things were pretty close, although I will say there is a slight advantage to the Santa Cruz and a little bit more of a premium feel. Now, let's talk about power. Now it's time to talk about powertrain, and if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? Not a bad little burst of power there. And 60. All right, so what we have under the hood here, of course, is the 2-liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder engine, 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It has 250 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. And here in this truck, it has an 8-speed automatic transmission. A pretty nice powertrain that's well proven in the Ford lineup. It has a pretty good power curve, and in this vehicle, with the amount of weight that we have here, I find that it's got pretty good power. This transmission has impressed me this week around town, and like when you're on the freeway and you hammer it and you really want to get some passing power, not only does that transmission drop down and give you that power, but the engine really spools up quite quickly. Now, of course, this has a number of things that most modern cars have. One is auto start stop. Engine stops when you come to a stop, and when you let off the gas, starts. Now, when it comes to fuel efficiency, this with all-wheel drive is rated at 22 city, 29 highway, and 25 mpg combined. In my week with it, with a pretty 50-50 blend of city and highway driving, I achieved 21 mpg. That's pretty well below the 25 mpg that's promised. So it does sort of fall short in the way of fuel efficiency, at least on my driving cycle. Woo! Nice little kick in the back, and 60. Woo! And more than that, in the wrong place. So this has got some good power, and it sounds good, and it works good. What's under the hood is the optional 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. This has 281 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque, and it puts power to all four wheels in this case through an 8-speed wet dual clutch transmission. Automatic in short, but it's a more sophisticated type of transmission than your typical automatic transmission. And one of the things this doesn't have is idle auto start stop. So as I come here to a stop sign, my peace isn't interrupted. I love that. This car should get 5 stars alone just because it doesn't have that awful system. That said, this is a powertrain that I have found this week works exceptionally well. This new 8-speed works very well. It almost feels like a traditional automatic transmission. The only key that it isn't is that you do get crisper shifts, and it does tend to be a little bit more immediate in the way it works, and that's a good thing. We are rated here at 19 city, 27 highway, and 22 mpg combined. Now, in my week with it, I achieved 20, which is a little less than promised, and it is winter. No AC this particular week, but I have been dipping into this power just a little bit, so, you know, there's that. Okay, now we've covered powertrain, and guess which one of these two vehicles has the better of the two, at least on the optional high end? The Santa Cruz. Again, Santa Cruz comes out on top. Horsepower, torque, and as you saw in the graphics, towing. Base towing and optional towing, quite a bit more than the Maverick even offers when it comes to that. And what I will point out though is if you're looking for efficiency in base powertrain, the base powertrains on both of these vehicles are pretty close in horsepower, but the Maverick offers a hybrid. Santa Cruz does not. That hybrid gets 40 plus mpg, real world, and that's a big difference. And so that makes the Maverick a play for some people that knocks the Santa Cruz right out of the park if you're looking for efficiency. And I will tell you that both of these vehicles are on my buy it list. Okay, I think they're both very well done. I actually purchased one of these vehicles, and that is the Maverick Hybrid. And the reason I purchased the Maverick over the Santa Cruz is because it was cheaper by about $4,000 for the base model, and it came with a hybrid. That made sense for my business, and that's the prism I looked at when I was purchasing the truck. So, which one of these two is better? Well, it might occur to some that I already made my choice by purchasing one of these things, but I will tell you that if I wanted to spend $4,000 to $10,000 more and I wanted a more premium vehicle that didn't need to pencil for my business, I probably would have bought the Santa Cruz because it's nicer in every way. It drives nicer, it looks nicer, it's got a nicer interior, it can haul more. The list goes on, and we talked about all those things, okay? Now, a lot of folks out there, you want me to tell you which one of these two trucks is better, and my answer simply is, it depends on what you want. It depends on what you need. My metrics when I was looking for a vehicle purchase had to do with money and efficiency and doesn't pencil for my business. Not everybody's doing that. Some people want something that's appealing, that's comfortable, that's gonna not only meet their needs, but be cool, that they're gonna feel good driving around. And that's only a decision that you can make. But one last thing I will leave you with is the fact that Hyundai has a much better warranty. And that's a big deal for some people. 10 years, 100,000 miles on the powertrain. Bumper to bumper is a little bit less, but it still exceeds Ford. And so while you can spend an extra $1,500 to $2,000 on the Ford and upgrade your warranty at the dealer to get the same warranty coverage, that's what you got to do. So there you go. Now, we do have a very detailed test drive on both of these trucks. What you saw here in this video is highlights. You can see the Ford Maverick right there and the Hyundai Santa Cruz right down there. Either way, stay tuned.